Ladies and gentlemen, transmitting direct from Lion's Den Studios in Los Angeles, California, Crewest Studios and Danube Productions bring you The Conduit, bringing together motivated artists to share their experience and to pull back the curtain for a first-hand look at a life in the arts. On this episode, our guest is MC and entrepreneur Bootie Brown from the Pharcyde, the Gorillaz, and much more. So adjust your antenna, relax, and tune in. The program is about to begin. All right, hey everyone, I'm Dan Ubik. Welcome to the first episode of The Conduit, where I sit down and talk to amazing, courageous people about making a living in the arts. Today, my guest is world-renowned West Coast rapper Bootie Brown from the Pharcyde and Gorillaz fame. Brown came up first as a dancer under the tutelage of the legendary Toni Basil and was featured in videos by Tone Loc, Candyman, and others. He studied music in the music biz under Rick James, Daz Band producer Reggie Andrews at Reggie's SCU program at Locke High School, and then became a household name in the early 90s with influential hip-hop group The Pharcyde, on top of beats by famed producers Jay Swift and ultimately Detroit's Jay Dilla, R.I.P. In 2004, producer Danger Mouse brought Brown into the fold with Damon Albarn's Gorillaz for the song Dirty Harry on the band's mega hit record, Demon Days, where he worked alongside luminaries like Ike Turner, Bobby Womack, Oasis, Lou Reed, Paul Simonon and Mick Jones from The Clash, De La Soul, Nina Cherry, and Nigerian drum guru Tony Allen. With Gorillaz, Brown has rocked huge crowds all around the globe, from the O2 Arena in London and Glastonbury to headlining California's Coachella. In addition to his accomplishments, though, Brown is also just really good people and has much insight into how he's made music his career. So sit back, relax, and have a listen to my conversation with the one they call Bootie Brown. Brown, it's my honor to have you as my first guest here on The Conduit, man. Thanks so much for being here.
Number one with the purse.
Yes, sir. You're number one in many ways. But so yeah, I want to start with this. This podcast is really, you know, as much as it's for me, and it's mostly for the listeners and people trying to get into this crazy lifestyle we call the music business. And I guess I want to just start kind of with you and how you started, you know, how you grew up, where you grew up. Do you have brothers and sisters? What did mom and dad do? Talk about your growing up, man. I want to just hear about that and how that influenced you.
Well, no brothers, no sisters, only child.
Okay.
Mom's a nurse. Father was, I guess, handyman, carpenter type person.
Oh, nice. Same with my dad.
Yeah, like, you know, so my first job was actually working with my father. He's a roofer, so we would do roofing and a lot of different, you know, stuff like that.
Right.
I would say that mom is Motown.
Okay.
Dad is hippie. Jimi Hendrix, Crosby, Still and Nash, Jethro Tull, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
So it was always a mixture of kind of music in the house, you know.
Sure.
I think first influences as far as just music was more or less like parties, being at the house when my mom and like the family would be over, and so basically I look at it that I think for me, just like I said, with the family, that was like the time that I could always play. I don't know. My dad was the kind of, don't touch my record player. You know what I'm saying? I had that. I mean, I can understand he had nice records and he had the record player, but when the family came over was the times that I could always play the music, and he would
nice.
just, so while they were playing cards and dominoes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They'd be like, "Oh, go play some music," you know?
Yeah.
So I think that gave me a chance to kind of monitor almost, I don't consider myself a DJ, but I could see.
You could see the reactions.
Yeah, like at certain times, like, you know, like, okay, like earlier in the daytime or something like that, you playing some Stevie Wonder, you playing more, you know, happy type family music, stuff like that.
Yep.
Then, you know, after a couple of drinks or something, they playing dominoes to things get a little serious.
Yeah.
Then it's like, okay, it's time to play like Miles Davis or something like that, you know, deep concentration music.
Right.
And then, you know, while we're eating, then, okay, we're going to go into the reggae time, you know, like something where everybody could just be a little joyous, you know. So
sure.
it was like you could kind of balance out the music. And so I think that helped me along the way of kind of understanding the moods to the setting.
Right. The power that has you controlling the setting. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. I feel like a lot of musicians are that way. You kind of see how it affects people. You're always watching. There's DJs as well, but you're always watching to see how the mood affects and how you can lift the mood if something's going on. So
yeah. So like when it got serious, like I said, like when it got serious during domino time, like you played Miles Davis and you could just see the brains like going off of the head, you know what I'm saying? And then like, you know, when it got a little too serious, like, okay, let's play some Horace Silver or something like that, songs for my father or something, you know what I'm saying? Something that's a little lighter, not as heavy as Miles, you know? So
sure. Yeah. Literally a song for your father.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man, that's cool. I wish my dad took better care of his records because when he passed, I got them all, but they were all scratched up from our parties where people were just throwing them on and scratching them up. So
wow.
That's cool. Your dad took good care of them.
Yeah. My father just recently passed, so I wound up getting...
Oh, I'm sorry.
I wound up getting his record collection, which I was like, you know, hate to see him go, but yay, records.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he loves that you have them and are playing them still, man. That's beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
Well, so what a beautiful way to grow up with parties and music in the house. It was kind of similar at my house too. I loved that. That's like some of my favorite memories. So moving into like grade school, you're meeting kids and getting all kinds of music, I'm sure, just like I was. What were the first kind of like professional groups that you were hearing on the radio or on people's turntables that made you kind of go, this might be something I think I could do, or something that's like, that seems interesting to me in a way that it might be something you want to do in the future?
I don't think, you know what? To be honest, like I always tell people, like music, I never thought like the music industry wasn't something that was initially like my first draw to. When I was I stayed in LA at first. So while we were in LA, it was a lot of Zap, a lot of Parliament. I mean, just the neighborhoods, that was just, you know, the 70s, that 70s funk sound, you know, that was just like heavy in LA.
Sure.
But then when I moved to Pasadena, because of like KROQ and the Swedish Eagle, I mean, it was all new wave up here and punk rock, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So when I came to Pasadena, it was like Duran Duran and and that kind of stuff, which I love. Yeah. Like I still love new wave to this day. Like I love. Same. I feel like new wave was like some of the best songwriting. Like
for sure,
all types of stuff. So yeah, so it was different. But I never. I can honestly say I never really felt like. I actually wanted to be an architect, so I never was really concentrating on. Music. I never saw that in my future.
Got you. Well, it's crazy that, how did it feel? I don't know what year I was reading, that you guys kind of, Reggie Andrews was a teacher at one of the schools you came up at. And what year was that? Was that grade school, junior high, high school? What was that?
No. So I would say, because we're all, Imani being the youngest, Fat Lip being the oldest.
Yeah.
So our age range was, I would say, from like 22 to 19, probably.
Yeah.
So we all were pretty much out of school when we met. When we met Reggie,
okay. Gotcha.
We met Reggie. It was kind of like basically what he had was an after school program. Now Jay Swift was young and still going to Lock High at that time.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
So Reggie, Jay Swift was kind of like Reggie's poster child as far as for the whole music stuff.
Right.
And so we would just go to Lock because that's where Reggie would teach. Like, he would have people come down that was, I think, like Mary Wells, and people would come down, and then we would kind of learn how to have breath control. And
he worked on that stuff with you guys. Dang, that's awesome.
Yes, so like Sarita, who sung with, she did a lot of stuff with Stevie Wonder. So she would tell us like, don't eat a lot of cheese, and if you're gonna smoke, don't smoke before recordings. And they gave us a lot of that kind of stuff, and like very like, I think, just knowledgeable things that you just like, a lot of people just don't get that kind of stuff and told to them. A lot you kind of got to find the hard way, or you learn while you're on the road. But so Reggie had like an after school program where Herb Albert had gave him and like at A&M had basically gave him a lot of music equipment because he wanted to have an after school program. At that time, I think the schools were shifting where they were losing the music programs at school. And so Reggie was kind of he had an after school thing at his house. He had a duplex complex. And so like one of the duplexes had like a studio that was inside. He lived in another place.
Oh, okay.
And so Jay Swift and his sister and brother stayed in a whole nother duplex. So
and this was all funded by Herb Alpert?
Well, Reggie actually, he was the manager of the. I don't know if he owned a duplex or he was a manager.
Okay.
But so Herb Albert basically gave the equipment.
Dang.
And so so it was just a lot of different things that was in there that I wasn't used to seeing. Like what is this? What is that?
Seeing that stuff for the first time, like right in front of you, is crazy. It made such an impression on me. Like you'd see it on record covers, but then when there's a guitar and electric guitar in front of you or whatever, you're just like, oh my God, there's one right there. It's amazing.
Yeah. So it was like the, like 8-track recorders and the samplers and stuff like that. Was like, what is this? How does this do? What does this do?
So he was not only showing you recording techniques and instruments, but actually having people come in and give you guys tips and all that too.
Yeah. So basically,
that's so incredible.
So basically, it was called SCU, and so
what is it? SAU?
SCU.
SCU. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So there was like, there was a girl singer group, there was a guy singer group, there was different musicians. Like I know Eric Bobo was part of a group that was there.
Okay.
So it was like 6 different kind of groups that would come, and we would just listen to Reggie, and he would just talk about management, music. He would it would just be a lot about a lot of different things, and we would just sit there, and he would just talk about his experience and songwriting and stuff like that.
Man, what a beautiful dude to do that. That's incredible. Very cool.
Yeah. So
what did SCU stand for? What was the acronym?
South Central Unit.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And that was at Lock.
So he taught at
his
Lock,
duplex.
But South Central, that was off of like the La Tierra, La Cienega, right there, like close to the airport.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Wow. Incredible, man. Incredible. So I'd like to talk to you about, I know dancing plays a huge part in your guys' history too, in your history. And I just want to it's so interesting to me, just, we kind of take these things for granted when, of how we came up and were offered opportunities, but just, I'd love for you to lay out kind of what it was like deciding you love dancing, how you worked up routines with people you danced with, and what it took to kind of get yourself ready for being asked to be in videos by Tone Loc and Candyman and all these people that I've heard you were a part of. How did that manifest itself? How did you prepare yourself for that?
So dancing was kind of a thing that was in high school because basically, um, there used to be, I don't know if you're familiar, used to be like these things called Uncle Jam's Army. Used to
Yeah,
do like
right.
these little things. So
Yep.
they used to perform at like skate land here in the valley and stuff like that.
Yeah. I know Skateland.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when I was in high school, basically I used to be like I guess like a promoter for something for like high school kids.
Oh, okay.
So the guy would kind of pick us up and we would just hop the fences to different schools. So we would go to Taft and all the schools in the valley, just hop the fence because nobody knew if we were a student there or not.
Right.
And so we would just go, and then like they would do the lunchtime dances, and so like kind of go and start the whole dance off, like get the whole kind of lunchtime dance party started.
Sure.
So that helped me just meet a lot of different people from different schools, different dance crews and stuff like that.
Right.
And then later on you meet, either that weekend or you meet that night, and you either have your battles or whatever it was, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So as time progressed, like, the dance crews, you just kind of stuck with the dance crew kind of thing.
Gotcha.
And so that eventually led to freestyle dancing. And, it was just people, I just think at that time, like there was a lot of videos and people wanted dancing in the videos a lot
Sure.
more than, I guess more than now. Cause you see dancing, but it's mostly like TikTok kind of stuff now,
Right.
But at this time it was like, everybody who pretty much wanted a video always had some kind of dance routine, whether it was Janet Jackson, whether it was Guy,
Right.
whether it was,
Yep.
so, Toni Basil was like very influential in getting us gigs. I mean, man, I couldn't say like Toni, Toni was it. Like she was the one
Right.
that, and at that time she would do a lot of choreography for Bette Midler and Barbara Streisand. So it was just like, it was just weird how she was really on like Broadway kind of side, but then at the same time she would do like the street level, like, Boogaloo Shrimp, and she was down with like the break-in and all that kind of stuff. So
Gotcha.
yeah, Toni Basil was definitely the person that kind of ushered in. And she was, I feel like I've just been fortunate because she was also like Reggie, like Toni Basil. You go to her house and she would just have like all these VHS tapes, and you sit there and study like the Nicholas Brothers, and you study like, Gene Arch, just all these different dancers and people. Like you just watch these old movies, and she'd be like, "See that there? And this is where this move come from." So, and she would give you history. So it's like,
that's awesome.
I was very fortunate to just kind of meet Toni Basil along the way.
God bless people like that who are just so self-motivated that they get so much shit to happen. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Through their own love of it, just pulling people in that love it too and making all kinds of things happen. It's impressive.
Yeah. Because I think the last time, my last dealings with Toni was actually, she was like, "Oh, Janet's about to go out." So it's like, and so I was like, "Oh, wow, we get to you tried out for, what is that club? The Princess Club in downtown. I can't, Grand Slam." So like,
right.
So Janet came to Grand Slam to kind of see where we were. Like I want to just see them in the natural element or whatever. And it was cool. We met Janet. She was like, "Oh yeah, I'm about to go on tour, and I just really want, some real urban kind of stuff, whatever." But I never, by that time I was in that transition of like dancing into the whole music career kind of thing.
Right. Well, I think it all goes back. This question is, probably a loaded question, in that it's just, you do it because you love it, and then you meet the right people because you love it. And it just keeps happening, when you're meeting all those same people, man. Surround yourself with people who love the same thing you do, and good stuff's bound to happen.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you try, what I'm saying? I mean, whether it's good or bad, it's always a learning experience.
That's true too. That is true too. Well, so just skipping away from dance here, what kind of when did you first start practicing and writing rhymes on your own, just before you kind of started the group and before you started doing your own thing? What got you interested in that? What inspired you to want to kind of get into that thing?
Like I said, the transition. So basically, at that time, um, I kind of was dating this girl, and there was, I can't think of the album, but Michael Jackson was doing his videos kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
the video he was doing was "Remember the Time." So
Okay. Yeah.
and so yeah, I tried out for the audition, and at that time, I was like a dance teacher. So like I was teaching like hip hop class, whatever,
Yeah.
and so like there was a lot of different people that was coming to our class, like all the new addition to come in, and Tisha Campbell from Martin and
Oh yeah.
Mario and all these people would come in and take the class.
Yeah.
So when it came down to the auditions, I was like, oh man, this is gonna be easy, like, but it just didn't work out. I didn't make the audition because being the basically the girl who was heading the audition we kind of had a falling out.
Okay.
And so I just got into this frame of mind. I was like, man, this is just this whole dancing thing has got a little too political for me. And I was just like, man, I'm gonna start doing music. I'm gonna start, like, man, this is the time for me to just I felt like I kind of reached the pinnacle. I was like, if I didn't make it to Michael Jackson, like, how far can you go as a dancer?
Right.
That's kind of like the top part, as far as you can go, as far as at that time. And when I didn't make it, it just I was just like, man, if I didn't make that, I don't know what else I'm gonna try to do. So yeah, then we just started writing. So we met Jay Swift. Oh well, I met Fat Lip first because Fat Lip was like, he needed some dancers for his he was having a talent show, and at that time he was Jammer D. So he's like, oh man, you guys are like the top dancers, man. Can you guys come? It was me and this guy named Robert. So he was like, it would be great if you guys could come and dance for me at my talent show or whatever. So he's like, okay, cool, So we met Fat Lip. And then it just happened that we met Jay Swift sometime after that. But the weird thing was Jay Swift was talking to Fat Lip at kind of like the same time. But the two wasn't together. Like he had met Fat Lip and then he had met us. And then we all wind up in this place at SCU together because Jay Swift was, he had basically kind of pieced up people that he wanted to work with. And so we just all like, oh shit, like, what's up? So the first group consisted of me, it was Imani, Trey, myself, and this guy named Robert. And we were at that time we were going by 2 for 2.
Okay.
So, and it was more like we had a song called We Want to Party. It was more like really upbeat, happy kind of stuff, like it wasn't, because dancing, being with Candy and being with Tone Loc, it was always more college, happy, fun kind of stuff. Nothing really deep like that.
Yeah. Crazy. So you guys just ended, it was a kind of Jay Swift put you guys together at the beginning.
Yeah, he just basically brought us. He was like, hey, man, have you guys ever thought about rapping? And at that time, like I said, like, he just came at that time that my mind was kind of transitioning. Like, okay, I kind of feel like I've done what I can do with dancing.
Yeah.
And so, so we stayed there. And then Robert was just like, man, he loved dancing so much. He was like, oh man, rapping's not really necessarily for me.
Yeah.
So he went to go tour with Janet. And when he went to go tour with Janet, that's when Fat Lip was always hanging with us or whatever. So he's like, man, you hang with us all the time. Like, you might as well just be in the group with us. And so that's where like he kind of came into the fold.
So that was the beginning though? Like you guys had never like done demos on your own or like written verses and like gotten stuff together already? It was just like, you guys want to try rapping, and then you just kind of jumped into it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy. That's so
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And
So
then how did you navigate that? Like, what was your kind of, I mean, you'd obviously been listening a ton, but how did you first go about like writing rhymes? Like, did you have a template, or
no,
guys you loved, or what'd you do?
No, I think what it was that we had been going out with like Tone Loc and Candyman and that stuff,
Yeah.
and doing all those things, it kind of came into our mind like, you know what? If we can dance and we can actually almost do what they could, like rap at the same time, like
Yeah.
we felt like we had like, oh, we're gonna kill it, like, because like we could do what they can do and we can still do, like we're their background dancers. So it's like, if we can combine the two.
Right.
And at that time, I want to say, I think Hammer was out.
Yeah.
So like, that was like our test. Like, okay, if you could dance this 12-minute Hammer song and rap at the same time, like, that's gonna be your win. That's gonna be everything. Not saying that Hammer was the best rhymer or rapper all time, but we understood the energy that it took for him to go on stage and dance and just rap that whole time. So that was like we used to have the thing called the Hammer test. So it was like, if you could come and dance for 12 minutes and rap at the same time, then it was like, okay, you can kind of do something. You can get your wind up to a level.
That's it, man. I try singing when I'm jogging sometimes. It's hard as can be, dude. It's like, I think of people like Mick Jagger, or people who are really getting into their performance on stage and singing at the same time. It is not easy, man. You got to work up to that. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think when you say people, like, I think really what it is, you learn breath control, like it's and that's something like you just learn that, like, and then I mean, it's like you said, Mick Jagger, like you see that kind of like a person that's been doing it for that long, and you're just like, how can he still do it? How can they still just go out there and just do that? But it's just like, I think it's a meditative trance kind of state that they go in, and they just know how to harness that energy to make that work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild, man. Wild. Well, so you guys are in a room, you've gotten together with Jay Swift. It's the four of you guys. And how do you, just for people getting into this again, how do you start booking gigs? What are your first gigs? Backyard parties? Kind of like, what are you guys doing to perform and get your performing legs on?
Most of it was like, like you said, backyard gigs. Imani's mom at that time, she used to do like these beauty pageants. So we would do like the hood beauty pageant and go out there and do that. And then it was like, there was like public access cable network kind of stuff that we would do, those kind of things. So we would do a lot of that kind of stuff. And then really, like, we were doing a lot of showcases, and at that time, I would say like a lot of the showcases are like, they would just be like at a rehearsal studio, be like, oh, there's a showcase, we got to go do the day to perform, to go see, so somebody, I remember doing, like John McClane was like one of the person that would always be around at these showcases. I remember just seeing him around a lot. So we would just do the backyard stuff wherever we could. Like, it was just like wherever we could do it,
Right. And figuring out what works and what doesn't and all that. Dang. And then what was the first big show, and how did you prepare for your first, do you remember what your first big show was? Like, you're doing lots of showcases, but what was like the one where it's like, oh shit, we're opening for so-and-so or whatever it is?
Wow, that's an excellent question. I can't even say what was the first big show. I know we had like showcases because, like I said, it was SCU, so we, there were singing groups, there was music, there was, all different. So I can't say what our first big show is. That's dope. So
Reggie also put together like shows that you guys would all perform at too.
Yeah, so we would do because there were singing groups. So like Jay Swift's sister is Merce.
Uh-huh.
Mercedes. So basically, I don't know if you ever heard of Jazzy Fat Nasties.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's J Swift's sister. And
Oh, crazy.
so like they were a whole different group. Like I said, Eric Bobo was there, and he had a
Right.
group that was there.
Dang.
So it was a like when we did a showcase, it was quite like it was like a mixture of like music that people could sing, because it was guys singing groups and it was
Right.
rapping, and it was just that. So yeah, I think those were like kind of the most fun, because it was just the crew, and like we would just go out and we would all celebrate each other and be like, "Oh man, you did so good," and just we all be
Yeah.
happy for each other.
Oh, that's beautiful, man. And what would you guys would kind of offer each other insight into what's working from just from a performance perspective and all that? Were you guys helping out each other in that way too? Like
Yeah, just
when you did that, that was really cool. It worked, it connected, and like,
yeah. So
that's
so like basically, I mean, we would all share like one person would, oh man, I need help with writing, or I need help with
right.
this, or we help the girl group, get their dance routine together. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So and they would help us, get our harmonies right or whatever it was. So it was like
Right.
we all shared some kind of introspect on each other. What one was more talented at. It kind of was a
Yeah.
shared kind of thing.
Yeah, that community is, it's such an important part of music, is surrounding yourself with people who are lifting you up, and not getting around people who put you down and are, kind of, you really want to surround yourself with a good community. That's such an important part of this game.
Yeah, so it was, and that led, I think, like that kind of vibe all led a lot during our career, because, like, you know, when Danny came out and Serge came out, like we were
Yeah.
introduced to that whole, like, you guys had your whole community in the Valley where, so
Yeah.
it was, you know, Jason and the guitar, and then
Yeah.
so it was just like a whole, like, oh shit, you guys have all these musicians here
Yeah.
that so it was just like a
Yeah.
whole. And you know I met all the, I want to say, yeah, it was through Andy Record Jungle. So
Oh, yeah,
Andy,
yeah.
because Andy stayed in the Valley,
Oh, okay.
and when Andy was producing, he used a lot of people like Danny and stuff to like play over his tracks and stuff like that. So that's kind of how that
Right.
introduction went. So yeah, that was a blessing when I went out there. I was like, oh my god, like, man, you guys got all these hell of a funky musicians out here that I probably would have
Right?
never met.
Believe me, I felt the same way when I met Danny and Steve K and Jason and all those guys, man. It's like, ooh, I got a bunch of dudes who all like the same kind of music I like, all play great. It's like, it was beautiful.
And just going to the apartment and just like, I'm like,
Yeah.
man, dude, you got you just transformed the whole apartment into
I know,
into
right?
a studio. I was like, man, this is crazy.
And no one ever complains either. Sergio's been running that place for like 20 years now. It's crazy.
I was like, man, this is
So cool.
yeah. I would love to do that. Like right now, like just like convert an apartment building into a
Right.
studio living place. That concept is so dope.
Yeah, man. The kind of the clubhouse environment, man, is beautiful. Good records get made that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, so moving onward in your wonderful career here so far, you guys were you linked up with Paul Stewart, who had worked with De La and Cypress Hill and House of Pain. Was he your first official manager? How did that go down? How did you find Paul? Did he find you? How did that work out?
So at that time, there was a lot of different music conferences.
Yeah.
And I can't think of the name. So there was a music conference that was in San Francisco. Why can't I remember the name right now? It's so bad. So me and Imani were actually dancing and kind of backup rapping for this group called Gang of Textbooks.
Oh,
And
yeah. You were telling Snoop about that. I was laughing at
yeah,
that.
so we went up to Frisco, and we had our, I don't think we had our demo on tape, but we had our songs that we had.
Yeah.
And after we got off stage, we saw Razzcast because we knew Razzcast as Raisin. You know, he was a dancer too.
Okay.
So we was like, oh, what's up, Raz? You know, what's up? He's like, oh man, what's going down? What you guys doing here? Like, oh, you know, we came up here to perform, but at the same time, we trying to, you know, just trying to see what's up because we trying to break into this whole industry type thing.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh man, you know what? If you guys got your stuff together, there's these people upstairs that you probably should meet. So he's like, cool, fuck, let's go. You know what I'm saying? So we go upstairs, we enter the room, and Sheena Lester's there from Rap Pages. Paul Stewart's there.
Yeah.
Albie's there from Tommy Boy. So it was like, I don't know if Dante was there, Dante Ross, but it was like all these like the young
players in the game, yeah.
Exactly. Like the A&R, the people that's out in the street that kind of do the connection. So
right.
They were like, oh man, you guys gotta, you know, what do you guys do? He's like, oh man, we got this song, blah, 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 blah. So he was like, okay, so what's up, Bus? So like, we just started doing Your Mama because that was the song that we knew. So I just remember just jumping on the bed, like getting like hella amped and hyped. They were like, what are you doing? What kind of song is this? What's going on, you know?
Yeah.
And so Paul was there, and Paul, you know, like I said, Paul came up to us afterwards. He was like, hey, man, if you guys got the demo tape, you give me the tape when we get back to LA. I'm pretty sure that I could get you guys a deal. He's like, nah, you bullshit.
Yeah.
So we get back to LA. We come back and do the tape. We come back and do. So I want to say Your Mama was on there. I think Officer was on there.
Yeah.
And partially passing me by because Lip at that time was like, man, I want to do it, but he was like, I want to do, you know, I want to give 6 months to do my verse. That was his thing. Like, man, I want to take 6 months to really get my rhyming and get the verse right. So we kind of had partial. And so we gave Paul the demo.
Yeah.
And I say like 3 weeks later, we just started meeting all these different record labels, you know?
Yeah.
So it was like Def Jam was coming out here, and we was meeting people. At that time, I'm going to say Paul was starting to work with Ice Cube. Okay. So he was doing, so when Ice Cube had this thing called Street Knowledge. And so Paul was like PNP Promotions. And so he was doing a lot of promoting. So like the whole time, it always seemed like we were promoting, like, you know what I'm saying? So like, I remember Super Cat was the record out at that time.
Yeah,
and so
man.
we were promoting Don Dada. Like that was like, I remember just having so many 12 inches of Don Dada. And that's how record. Exactly. So that's how we met Big Boy. So Big Boy was also promoting at that time.
Okay.
So we were all promoting Super Cat, and we just hit the clubs hella hard, and you know, while we were promoting, we were also like shopping. Like Paul was shopping the deal at the same time.
Dang, man. Yeah. So just immersing yourselves in it. That's the way. Dang. So you guys got signed to by Mike Ross at Delicious Vinyl because of that demo. And what was it? I mean, just for anyone who's never been there, you get an offer from a label and you go in and have that meeting. They're ready to sign you. How old are you at that point? You're like 18? Younger.
I would say at that time, like I said, by the time we got there, I want to say I probably was like 20. I probably was like 20.
Okay.
And Imani, like I said, Imani was younger.
Yeah.
Lip was older than, like a year or so older than me. So at that time, it was like we were at that brink where it's like, oh shit, I don't know if like man, am I gonna be this homeless adult? You know, because it was like what am I gonna do? Like I'm 20 now. Like there's like the time is starting to run. The clock is ticking. You know.
Sure.
So we had the demo. We was doing the deal, but what sealed it for us with Delicious was they had the brand new Heavies record that was coming out. So Mike kind of like was like, hey man, this is kind of, you guys can be on this record to just start off your whole career. And we were like, what? Large Professor,
Yeah,
Cool G Rap. Like
I
we were just
know.
looking at all the people that was on the record. We was like, okay, Delicious Vinyl's kind of like that sucked us into the whole thing. So
They're doing cool
Soulflower was
shit.
actually like our first record that
Release.
we was actually at a studio to record.
Right.
Mm.
So, okay. So how does it just as an 18, 19 and 20-year-olds, how does that go where you're dealing with a label? How did you go about getting an attorney to go in and look over contracts? How did you know that you were signing the right stuff? Like how did all that work and how did it work out?
I can actually say we didn't know.
Okay. Yeah. Like many don't. Many don't.
Yeah, we didn't know. Like, like I think at that time we were just so happy to do it. I mean, we had
Sure.
because Reggie was there, we had a little knowledge as
Oh,
far as
good.
like some stuff because he told us some of the things.
Oh, thank God for
But
Reggie again.
it got a little weird though because like at I won't say we had a fallout with Reggie, but
Yeah.
we kind of avoided ourselves of being in a production deal because it
Hmm.
was just it was that thing like you're in a production deal, then it's your label, then it was like that hell of a fractioned off kind of thing, and
Yeah.
so we were like we kind of avoided the production deal and just gave Reggie like points from the record kind of
Okay.
thing because we
Yeah.
like that's just a being in a production deal was more or less like he wanted to sign he wanted to do a package kind of deal. So like Delicious wasn't just going to get us, they were going to get, 3 or 4 more groups that was with SCU.
Oh, okay.
And we felt like we just kind of got to the thing of like, well, because a lot of people didn't think we thought that the music, like the singing groups, were going to go ahead, like be the first ones to sign. But for whatever
Yeah.
reason, we were actually the first ones that got signed. So
Gotcha.
it was like, well, I don't know if the production deal thing is going to be the best advantage thing for us.
Right.
And so, yeah, the
He had to
whole
have understood that, I would think,
yeah, but the whole attorney thing, I mean, I
Yeah.
think when you first start, it's like, our attorney knew our accountant knew this, and the
Right.
manager knew this. And
Right.
so in one way it's good because you get a lot of things done, but in another way it's bad because it's like there's a lot of stuff that go across desks that you're not aware of
Right.
until you're in the mix.
Right.
So it was good for us. I mean, when you think about the time, that's how everybody's deal was. So it wasn't like, oh, my deal is worse than anybody else's deal. Because
Yeah.
everybody, I want to say, you probably was getting fucked at that time. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yep.
So it was more or less like, you do the standard 8-album deal. That was just how it was.
Yeah. Yeah. And how did you ultimately get out of that contract?
So by the second record, and a couple of management shifts, we
Yeah.
met Trey. Trey was working with this guy named Richard Lewis.
Hmm.
And so Richard kind of followed the Wu-Tang, where we kind of was able to hold out because basically he saw how Wu-Tang basically, Raekwon had a deal over here,
Sure.
and Method Man had a deal over here, and this person had so it was like if everybody had their separate deals,
Yeah.
they could almost say like, hey, I'm recording my album right now. I can't really necessarily do this as a group right now.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
So Richard kind of followed that format. He's like, man, if you guys are not happy with Delicious Vinyl, how we can play it is that you guys got different deals and you really just don't have the time to kind of get together to do, a Pharcyde record. So
Gotcha.
that kind of was part of the reason how we were able to get out the deal.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. And I'd love to, yeah, I mean, I know that second record was, it was kind of where the group splintered off. And I'm interested to know kind of how that played out. Because from what I've read, I understand that you and Imani kind of got left holding a bunch of debts. And then later on, there was an offer to reform with the Rock the Bells Festival that was hopefully going to pay you guys back. That was going to be part of the deal. But that kind of ended up working out a little bit differently than you'd hoped for. And, you know, I think that's a common theme with so many in the music business where it's like just shit happens and people get different ideas in their heads, and how you traverse situations like that. And how did you guys traverse that situation? Because it sounds like it was a pretty complicated one.
I mean, actually, things are still evolving and ongoing, so it just
Okay.
it never stops. And I think, like, you know, when you're younger, how I can say is when you're younger and you don't have kids and you
Yeah.
don't have a lot of responsibilities, you can sleep on somebody's couch, you can sleep on somebody's floor, you can wake up in the studio, you don't care. There's no time, there's no responsibility, there's no clock.
Right.
But once you get older, you know, like, you have responsibilities, you have, like, it's just different, you know, and
Yep.
your music, the music that you do, it's more survival. It's more like you got it. Like, this is your survival now, and how you're going to feed your family. So it's like the way that things wasn't as serious, and you could play them like, oh, it's not very, you know, I'm not really worried about that. It becomes a different thing. Like, hey, this is my livelihood. You know,
It's your retirement plan too.
yeah, exactly. And so it's like all that comes into play about, so, you know, when I look at it in a sense, it's like your moves has to be more calculated. It's not
Yeah.
it's not as sporadic. You can't be as sporadic and say, hey, I'm just trying to do this just for this, you know. It's
Yeah.
like when you start focusing on, and then you after a while you come into, it's the business. You kind of learn, like, oh, this is music business. This is not just music, you know?
Yeah.
And so you have to calculate. You have to, you know, unfortunate, because a lot of times, you know, maybe sporadic is the best.
Yeah.
But you may not get the results financially that you're looking for if you're just doing things sporadic.
Right. Right. Have you ever run into, like, just getting into the zone of publishing and writing and copyrights and all that stuff? Have you had to deal with, like, when did you first start learning about how important that is to own your publishing and getting that all squared away as you're entering into different situations?
I think, well, during the time of, like, you know, making the records, Bizarre Ride and Lab Cabin and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because I was getting my producer legs kind of going on,
Yeah.
and, you know, you do your ghost production that you probably don't get credit for, and just a lot of
Right.
different things that you do. And so you start kind of calculating things like, hey, why does that guy have a new car and we both worked on the same song together? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so,
Exactly.
and so it's like, and so then that's when you start learning, like, oh, okay, there's a business, you know, like, okay, he
Yeah.
made sure that he had this amount of points. He made sure that this was covered, you
Yeah.
know? And so I think, you know, in the beginning time, like the beginning, I think for anybody, you just gotta, I don't know. I haven't talked to one person that hasn't took that hit. Like,
Yeah.
when you first get into it, either if you're either writing or either, you know, production, you're going to take that hit. Like, you're going to
Yeah.
take that one where it's like, damn, that got away from me. Like, you know, and it you know, hopefully it's not your only and your biggest hit.
Yeah.
But, you know, a lot of times for a lot of people, it is that way.
Yeah.
But, during the production, I would just sit down and then you would hear, like, I would say, like, man, like, a person that really broke down the music game because they were getting it. I remember looking at Left Eye from TLC, and
Oh,
she
yeah.
really she broke it down, like, okay, this is what happens. This is because and I never knew that she was a writer for a lot of the songs. And she was like, hey, this is what happens when you have a production. This is what happens when you have the label. This is what happens when you go on tour, when you get this advance. Like, she broke it down totally about certain things. And so, you just started seeing things, and, Tip from Quest, he would talk a lot about publishing stuff and just how things would go. So it was like you just started hearing people just talk a little bit more about, hey, just if you sample, make sure you do this. If this is whatever, sampling was everything at that time, and so it was like, make sure that the record company, whoever you're working for, clears that sample. Like, don't let them not clear that sample, else you're going to pay for it later down the line, and you're going to be responsible. So it's just like, I think that was a very learning thing as far as for hip hop back, because you had to kind of understand what rights you were going to give away, how many points you were going to get. So that kind of was very introspective as far as learning the game in some kind of way.
Yeah, well, it's, that's a good point to bring up. I mean, not as many people sample anymore, just because it takes so much of, the your percentage, but it's, going in and giving people their due. It's better to do it up front and get that out of the way, because if you put it out and it's got their music in it that's copywritten, they call all the shots and they can tell you how much they want from it. And you might make way less than you would have if you'd worked it out at the beginning.
Yeah, I know that when I hear about like people nowadays, because I think the money that you make on records is not really necessarily as big as the fame and notoriety type thing, So a lot of people now, they don't care. They'll sample, and, if somebody comes and sue me later because they want the rights to the song, well, it's fine, because I already got the notoriety. Like, I'm at a position where, like, people already notice me. I'm on my social media is at such a standing, like, and I really didn't make that much money for the record anyway, so it's not even a big deal,
Right.
So people don't worry about it, but at that time, it was like, when you see like the Beastie Boys and stuff that they did, and you just, like Paul's Boutique and and De La, who like, did their records, and like you just heard the nightmares that was going on when everybody came back to them, like, hey, this is our song, we didn't clear this, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, and like, it's like, fuck, like, people almost going to jail because just crazy stuff. Like, man, I thought we was making, I didn't know it was like, I didn't know all this was going to come out of me sampling a record, Well,
that was a maiden voyage, those records there. Nobody had any idea at that point. I mean, with Prince Paul and the Dust Brothers and everybody doing all that sampling, it's like they just didn't know it would have that much of a fallout, but it sure did. Oh, boy. You can't, they were sampling Zeppelin and all kinds of different stuff. So,
yeah. And then you had like, they were sampling like 5 songs to one track. And it's like, oh my God, like what type of clearance do they like, do you even own any of this? Like what part do you own with all these samples,
Exactly. Well, speaking of records with amazing samples on it, when Bizarre Ride to the Pharcyde came out and went gold, I'd just love to hear kind of your insider's view on what the hell that's like to deal with, man, being relatively pretty young. I'm assuming kind of, getting money, getting some notoriety, but what is that like psychologically? What is that like socially, financially, to be caught up in such a whirlwind at such a young age, man?
Well, I mean, actually, like financially, like, it was a little, I mean, we weren't balling out of control or anything like that, And then like, honestly, like it took 2 to 3 years before Bizarre Ride went gold. So we had been touring so much, like we had been doing every alternative tour that you could name, like Lollapaloozas, Snow Cores, like all these, like, I mean, we were thrown into that, what they call an alternative type. And I used to hate it so much. I was like, why we got to be alternative? Why can't we just be hip hop, you know?
Right.
But they were like,
right.
no, you got to understand, like, if you do this, you're kind of entering a zone that people haven't really explored that like that. So,
Sure.
you know, that's where it was kind of, we were almost kind of treated like the Beasties, how Beasties, you know, they were punk bands, so they could go out and do all the skater shows and stuff like that.
Right,
so we were
right.
almost in that genre, in that vein, where we can go do a lot of Palooza and like the skaters and the surfers and all those kind of people like this. And then we could still go and do, you know, the gutter shows, like do some stuff with like Buckshot and all those kind of people.
Right.
So, yeah, but like as far as like having super cash, it never was a thing. Like having super cash, it was more or less like we knew that we wasn't broke. You know what I'm saying? We knew we could go and get something to eat when we wanted. We could have a car. I mean, but we still were like, we were living together.
Yeah.
I mean, both albums we lived together. So like, you know, our expenses was kind of low, but second album, I had kids during the second album, and Imani as well had kids. So, like I said, that started getting into that financial responsibility where it's like, okay, like this is a little serious now. Like we got kids and things is changing up a little.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of the second record, I was just interested in, you know, it was kind of it seemed like a little bit more of a slow burn than the first record too, in that, you know, people kind of had heard the first record, loved it. And the second record, you know, admittedly was pretty different than the first record. Much like you were just saying the Beastie Boys, it's like everybody knew them from, you know, the kind of frat boy party anthems of their first record. And then they came out with Paul's Boutique and it kind of commercially flopped at first, but then, you know, it's obviously heralded as a, you know, a landmark genius record, much like Lab Cab in California is. And it's like, what is that like, first of all, where you're talking to a label about making your second record, they think you're going to be doing it with Q-Tip or, you know, bigger name producers, and you guys want to bring in this then unknown producer, Jay Dilla. What is that like, talking to a label about trying to get, you know, what you want to do artistically versus we don't know who this young kid is that you want to produce? What's that like? It was hell.
It was hell. Yeah, because
I bet it was.
Because when we, you know, we were like you said, we were supposed to work with Q-Tip, we were supposed to work with DJ Premier, we were supposed to work with all these producers, Pete Rock.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I wanted that. Like, that's what I felt like, man, we wanted that New York, because we felt like nobody in LA had crossed over into that New York vibe.
Yeah.
And we wanted to kind of bring that vibe back to LA. Like, oh man, we're a West Coast group. And I think maybe Ice Cube was doing it with the Bomb Squad, because he was doing
America's Most Wanted.
Yeah, he was doing the stuff with like Hank Shockley and stuff like that, you know. But we felt like, okay, Ice Cube is that. We're kind of dealing with the, you know, like I said, the Evil D's, Buckshot, and the Diamond D's, and it was a different thing. So we were thinking like, oh man, we're gonna bring this powerful record back. But once we got out there, a lot of the people that we're getting music from, which I could say, like, you know, at the time we being naive, you know, like I think New York people, because hip hop had been, they had been in the hip hop, you know, it was ingrained in them a little bit more than it was out here in LA. So they kind of already knew, like, hey man, you want to try to make a hit record, you know, like you want, that's the thing. So being that Pass Me By was somewhat, I guess you can say it was a hit record at the time. When we went to New York, a lot of the tracks that we get was more melodic, and everybody was trying to get that hit record. Like, we want that, we got to get these guys that next Pass Me By. Like, that's going to, you know, that's their vein. So everything that we got was that type of whatever. And
Yeah.
so Q-Tip was at the studio. Q-Tip at that time was doing Mobb Deep's record. He was mixing and mastering, and he was doing a lot of stuff on Mobb Deep's second record.
Yeah.
So he was like, he played some music, and he was like, man, I gotta be honest. You know, my mind is kind of somewhere else right now, but I met this guy while we was on Lollapalooza. I met this kid that was in Detroit. He's like, I got this tape. So he's like, man, come to the house and I'll play this tape for you. So go to his house. Tape says John Doe, pops it in, and it was like 30-second, 45-second clips. No longer than that. Like, it was just really short clips.
Yeah.
And we were just, it was me, Trey, and Imani that went to his house. And we were like, dude, what the fuck are we listening to right now? Like, this is like nobody else's music right now. Like, this is new. This is different, you know? And so we knew at that point, like, this is the sound we got to go back with. And so we recorded a few, JD came down because he was in Detroit. He came down to New York, and High Tech was around that time because High Tech, I want to say he was doing Talib. So they were kind of, High Tech was in Ohio or Cleveland. Yeah, Cleveland. I think he was coming down. And so they both came down at the same time. So it was like, damn, this is this new Midwest kind of like crazy. So like when we came back, Delicious was like, what the fuck is this? Like,
shit.
Who's this guy you working with? Like, who is he? Like, you know, like, what does this sound like? This is not what we sent you guys to go get. And I just remember I would just argue with Mike all the time. Like, dude, you got to understand, this is going to be the next. I'm telling you, it's going to be the next wave.
And even saying things like, I mean, you could say like, you know, Q-Tip recommended this guy to us and that didn't carry any weight whatsoever.
No, because they felt like they did. I mean, I have to. It took me a long time to understand, like, okay, and that's what I'm saying. It's the business, you know. Like, I wasn't thinking business. I wasn't thinking hit records. I wasn't thinking that side. They were thinking like, hey, man, how are we going to promote this? Like, it's an automatic if you have a tip. It's an automatic if you have a Pete Rock. It's an automatic if you have like. We're going to have to spend more marketing money, more dollars to try to market this unknown kind of guy. Like now it's just it's kind of rest upon you guys making a dope track to make this work, you know?
Right.
And it took me years outside of the situation to understand it. But yeah, like I remember arguing with Mike about Drop, like, fiercely, like, dude, like I'm telling you, this is gonna be at the club. This is gonna be a song that people's gonna do it. And it didn't cross over to him until we met with Spike Jones, and Spike Jones was like, man, I have an idea for the video. Right. And so that kind of intertwined us more with Beastie Boys a little, because you know, we met with Mike D. He was doing, can't think of the Grand, oh man, what is the name of the magazine? He was doing a magazine at the time, Grand Royal.
Yeah.
And that was the name of their label as well. So Spike was the photographer for Grand Royal. And when we went to Mike D's house to do an interview, Spike was like, oh man, I want to do a video for that. We were playing our music while we were doing the interview. And he was like, man, I want to do a video for that song.
Oh shit!
And so he was just, well, he had some videos, but he had just did Sabotage, and we were like, oh shit, like man, this is like Beastie is gonna actually be in our video, and so I think that's when Delicious Vinyl was like, okay, we wasn't finally seeing it. Yeah, we wasn't seeing it. Yeah. But
now that the Beastie Boys are going to be in are going to be in the video, it's okay. We understand it finally. The commercial appeal.
And you know, like I said, like I didn't understand looking back at it, being that Matt Dyke was part of the Dust Brothers. It was kind of like a full circle thing that was going on, because Matt Dyke was like the first person. He was like that was the very first studio we went to, and I just remember it's like at that time Matt was he's pretty in bad shape, like like the drug thing was kind of like and so but it kind of was that full circle of the Paul's Boutique, and then we come back around, and now the Beasties want to be involved with our situation. So it's like, oh shit,
Right.
this is a no brainer.
Right. Dang. Well, that's that's just such a wild thing to be a part of, with dealing with labels who don't always see the artistic, the balance of the artistic versus the financial is a difficult one.
But I mean, like I said, like looking back at it now, I can understand what it was.
Right.
But it kind of disheartened me in a way, because I was just like, man, why am I arguing to do music? And I felt like it was a waste of time, just like always having these arguments. Yeah. I mean, I understand like you want to get the best, maybe you're doing it because you want to get the best product out there.
Right.
But as we got older, as things started, the business got a little bit more intense. It was more arguments and less more music creation and taking that risk, that chance,
Yeah, right. You mentioned Matt Dyke and drug issues, and that's just obviously it's been a prevalent thing in the music business forever. And I know Jay Swift had issues too, I've read. And I'm just wondering how through the years, like we all have issues with people who get involved in some kind of chemical dependency, is how do you navigate those waters when you're in a relationship with someone creatively and, business-wise? How do you... how have you dealt with that in the past, Brown? What's your...
Well, I just know, like, as far as like our experience with Jay Swift, we really didn't experience it too much. But I say, like, after Bizarre Ride, Jay Swift, I mean, he was younger than us. So Jay Swift probably was like 2 or 3 years younger than us. So he was really young, and like he was getting, I mean, I remember like Puffy was coming up to Jay Swift, wanted to do Mary J. Blige records and all that kind of stuff. And so like he just got a lot fast. Like he had a lot fast. And so he signed a deal, Fat House Records, with Tommy Boy. And I remember like he went from, after working with us, they got this house in like Malibu or something, like something crazy. Like, like, so it's like, they were just living the life, you know what I'm saying? So you're young, you never thought that was going to happen before.
Right.
And, you're in the studio, and experimentation. I just think, but
right.
If you don't have nobody there to kind of like, hey man, you kind of taking it too far. Like, you don't have that person that's there. I think like it's easy for you to get, cause that's just there. Like that's just something that's there all the time. And like, people are going to come with it and be like, hey man, what you doing? Oh man, I ain't doing shit. Oh man, let's try this. Let's try this. And then you just keep, the experimentation just keeps going further and further and further. And
I think you were, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say, I think you were talking earlier just about, just having, I think having mentors around you that are kind of helping you. And, at the beginning, that was so much Reggie for you guys, but did he continue to be someone who might have stepped in that way? Just like, did he ever talk about chemical dependency or any of addiction?
For sure. Reggie, because he was in the 70s where like, man, cocaine was like Coca-Cola. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
like,
absolutely.
It wasn't nothing bad,
Yeah.
So he definitely would talk about it. And, I was always a person, I like to watch a lot of documentaries, and I just remember like, looking at John Coltrane and Miles Davis and a lot of people, even Jimi Hendrix. Like my dad was a Hendrix fan, so
Same here.
I remember my dad would always be like, yeah, Jimi Hendrix would, you know, when you saw him with the bandana, like he had like 6 tabs of acid in his bandana.
Right.
And when he sweats, the acid starts going in his pores and stuff like that. So you just hear about like all these wild, crazy stories that was going on. And then, you know, you hear about Coltrane and Miles Davis, and you hear about them saying like, man, you have to do heroin. You know what I'm saying? You'll never know you never be the coolest man alive if you're not doing heroin. So it's like, you hear these stories of these great people doing stuff.
Yeah.
And I think you just want to experience it because it's like man, I want to break out of this thing and be like these great musicians. And they're saying that this made them think about music or look at music different. So you're like on that thing of like, I want to do it. But Reggie kind of told us the like, oh, you could do it. You could probably be the greatest person for like a year, but that next 2 or next 3 afterwards, like, can you rescue yourself?
And can you hang? It's like everybody's constitution is different. You know, it's like what might work and be passable for someone just because of their upbringing or whatever, their genes or DNA can handle certain things, and other people, it'll freaking ruin their life. So I feel like just knowing yourself and having people around you that know you really well is such an important thing, you know?
Yeah.
To keep you balanced.
I look at George Clinton like he's an alien. You know what I'm saying? Because I like, man, from all the drugs that I've heard, you know, everybody knows like crack cocaine was very prevalent and all that kind of stuff. And so when I see George Clinton, I'm like, how is this man alive? And like
I know.
Prince, like a Prince, or
I know, right?
These other people are just not around no more. Like how does this man do it since the 60s? Like hardcore, you know? So like,
but those people are few and far between. I mean, the George Clintons and the Keith Richardses, there's only so many of those dudes that are around these days, you know?
Yeah.
You know, it takes a rare constitution to hold up to all that, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. So it's just like I said, like I'm like, man, this guy has to be an alien. Like, you know, like there's no way that he could do all this stuff and still survive, you know. And like you said, Keith Richards, like you look at him, and it's so funny because like you could just tell when you see him laugh or you see them talk, like you're like, yeah, that's years and years of like perfecting that magic.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. So crazy. Well, what did I want to ask you? I've got a couple more questions left for you here. I guess just getting into your kind of personal outlook. I saw some interview I was looking at this morning where you were talking about your 3 Ps. You were talking about preparation, practice, professionalism, and patience. And I thought that was so beautiful because all the times I've been fortunate enough to work with you, you're always like that. You come in, you've got stuff written, you're there on time, you're prepared, and it's always just so easy to work with you. You come with so many creative ideas, and I feel like that's something that really should be passed on to artists, is like when you're coming into a situation, be over prepared, be there on time, do your best job, because that's what's going to get you, you know, hired over and over again. It's what's going to get people to want to keep hiring you. And I just am interested.
For me, like I've always had a job, you know? So I think that played into it. Like I worked for Domino's, I worked for Taco Bell, worked for the bank. I always had a job. So, you know, you got to be
held
on time.
accountable.
Like, yeah. And so I think that a lot of people who come into music sometimes they may not have a job. So like they don't like that background of or self-check is not in there. I mean, some people have, depending on like if they've been shitted on for a lot of years, then they feel like, oh, I'm gonna start shitting on people because I was shitting on for so long, you know?
Right.
But for me, being in a studio, I mean, you being a producer, being in the studio, you know, like once you enter those big studio, time is money.
Yeah,
and so the biggest thing is okay, how many concepts can we get to? Because maybe the first one won't work, maybe it's going to take 3 or 4 times. So if you're like you said, over prepared,
Yeah.
then you could kind of like, okay, that concept didn't work. Let's go
Right.
ahead and jump into this next concept because maybe we can try it like this. Like you get
Right.
more chances to make it right. But if you're not prepared, if you kind of don't have that mindset, then you could spend 8 hours in the studio bullshitting and like, man, where the fuck did time go? And like,
Yeah.
like then all of a sudden your budget, like like all that starts playing a part, and once that starts playing a part, then you know the anger starts building up because it's like, man, we're wasting time, and then there's a lot of bickering
Sure.
going back and forth. So it's like, if you kind of ahead of the curve, you kind of know you can kind of work through different ideas to find out which one works the best.
Right. Well, I just know, I mean, that one time we did that thing for Matt Fife at the Village where we were doing that. It was like what was it? E-Network or something, that spot with that British group. You guys came in so over-prepared. You had all the executives laughing. Like, it was just such a good vibe in there. I was like, I knew, from working with you guys before, it was just like, I know these guys are going to do a great job. It's always, the vibe is always nice. People are over-prepared. You and Amani are always over-prepared. And it's just such a beautiful thing to watch because everybody feels good. Their money's getting spent in a way that they know they're going to have something really cool to use. And, I'm grateful for it, man. It's not everybody is that way. So all of you listening out there.
And then at the same time, like just listening to like when you hear like a person like Snoop and stuff like that, that's why like Snoop is still, he's still prevalent because he knows like the producer, this is like, I may not, even though I have an idea, I need to follow the producer's direction. And so it's like, you gotta understand like, okay, I'm at this point, I've been on the side where I've been the producer. I've been on the side where I've been the artist. And so I know like what works for me is having that artist that'll kind of listen and you say, hey, can you try this? Can you do this? Can we take this out? Can we see how this fits? That helps because now it's like you're giving guidance and you can, but sometimes it's difficult to take the guidance. And so it's like, you gotta, sometimes you just gotta let it go. And like, you know what? I know how I wrote the rhyme and how I want it to go, but maybe this producer, what their vision could be right. So let me just try it how they want to do it, and a lot of times that's hard for people to do because they feel like, this is my baby and I'm giving birth to this and you're not going to tell me how to dress my baby,
Right.
I'm not trying to tell you how, I'm just trying to tell you like, okay, it could be raining where we're going, just put a raincoat on your kid, you know what I'm saying? So it's like,
I'm interested. That brings up the point of your good fortune in working with Damon Albarn and then the Gorillaz. And how did that play in? How did that relationship go when you first jumped into it? How does he like to work? How did you find yourself kind of bending, to what he wanted? And generally, how did that situation play out?
So it's weird because the way that I was brought in through Danger Mouse. I didn't actually meet Damon until like, I didn't meet him for a while till we went to London. And I don't know, it's something about, I don't know if I want to say the song that I did kind of secured Danger Mouse's production with doing that album because I think I think there was a lot of producers they were trying to work with at the time. And once Danger Mouse presented that record, they were like, okay, we want you to be the producer on this record. So me and Imani had did a track with Danger Mouse previously, and he lived up in the Mount Washington area, and he was like, oh man, so he had like a whole little setup, and he was like, oh man, you should come to the house. I'm trying this demo because I didn't even know when I did it, I didn't even know it was for Gorillaz at all. I had no idea. He was just like, man, I'm doing this demo. Can you come over and record this? And I was like, okay, cool, you know. And I heard the track. I always say, like, I wasn't a big fan of the track, but I was like, my thing is like stepping out of the comfort zone sometimes, especially, like I said, when you dealing with a producer, sometimes they see things or they see your, you know, maybe they see your voice fitting with something that you obviously don't see.
Sure.
So I heard this. I heard it. I was just like, oh man, what is this? What is this? And then he's like, I just, you know, just want you to try some stuff. And so the same way as we were talking, like Danger Mouse was like, oh man, you know, the same as you. Like when we worked together, he was just like, man, this is a little wordy. You know, man, let's take this sentence out. Try this. Try that.
Yeah.
And you know, I recorded the song, and then he's like, oh man, the song made it for this group called Gorillaz. And I was like, oh shit, like, you know, like at that time though. I didn't know a lot of their records, but I knew Dale I knew the Dale track with him working.
Yep.
But I had, in my mind, I had no idea how big they were until I went to UK, and then, oh, this guy, you know, Damon, he was with, you know, it's with this group called Blur, a big, you know, band. And, you know, then it start all the pieces and all the people that was working on the album started coming together. And I can say, like, being involved with that definitely, shit, it's landmark. It's landmark for me because all the people that I met, I mean, I became very good friends with like Ike Turner. You know,
Crazy.
like Nina Cherry was there.
Yeah.
It was just
Did you get
so
to hang
crazy.
with Mick and Paul from The Clash too?
Man, all the time.
Man.
Like me, Greg and Mick was like, we were like smoking partners. We all like, Mick would come knock on the door. What's up, man? Like, and it was just, it's so crazy because it was like, man, I used to, you know how you like, you try not to be like a groupie, but I just was like, there was no way that I couldn't tell him that, dude, Rock the Casbah was like my shit, dude. Like, like that whole record, I would listen to like so that Clash record so much, you know?
Yeah.
And so then it just kept going on because the tours kept going on, you know, every time they did something, you would meet somebody new. So like the next record, Bobby Womack was out. So like me and Bobby Womack was like real tight, like, you know, like, and Beautiful. So Tony Allen was there. And so same thing, like Tony was tight with Tony Allen. So it's like, then the next record, Lou Reed comes.
And so, really? Like, I didn't know he worked with him too.
Yeah.
Dang.
So like Lou Reed was there. And then, what's the brothers? I can't think of their name. The Gallagher brothers, the ones.
Oh yeah, Noel and Liam Gallagher.
No, they were there all the time. Yeah. So it was like, there's no way on this planet that I would have met all these people. I felt, and like Damon was
all from trying something that you weren't sure about at the beginning, right? Trying something new. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Once you branch out and get out of your own head and just try some stuff and start trusting other people to, you know, that they might have a plan for you, it's crazy how the doors can open. That's such a beautiful story, Brown. Thanks for sharing that, man.
Yeah. It was incredible. It was incredible for sure.
Incredible, man. And I got to do some pretty big shows with De La, but I can't believe they're even as huge as the ones you guys did with Gorillaz at like O2 and Glastonbury and stuff. How is it, for our last question, what is the difference between preparing for a huge show like that and preparing for a club show? Like, how do you go about them any differently?
Yeah, I think when we were dancing, like I had to break it down because like when we were dancing, it was always Toni Basil was always when you're dancing in the club, okay, you're just in a circle and you know you're kind of in your own zone. But when you're dancing on stage, your presence has to be bigger than you. So she was always like, you know, you have to wave your arms, like you do a lot of arm movement, you do a lot of things to make your presence bigger. And
Right.
so when you're at a club, you can, it's like you could be Prince Computer Blue and just be weird, like you don't have to you don't have to do that. But when you were doing these book festivals and stuff like that, it's like, okay, my presence has to be that much larger, and
Right.
you have to present yourself a little grandiose. So when doing the Pharcyde stuff, I can just, like I said, I can do weird stuff. I can just like be in my zone and be myself. But like,
Sure.
going out on Coachella with Gorillaz, it's like, okay, now you're in front of 100,000 people, and like the focus is on you. So it's like,
right,
that 3 minutes or 4 minutes that you're on stage with that song,
yeah,
it almost feels like an hour. Like
right.
the energy that it's taking, like the energy that it takes, you feel like, oh my God, like I gotta put this super amount of energy into this thing that's going down.
Sure.
So I think like that's a difference from club, like, to, like I said, that energy that you put, that all, like, I just know, like when you're doing Glastonbury or something like that.
Yeah.
That energy that you burn, that you have to give, because you're doing these huge stages at the same time. So it's like, oh, if I'm doing one like this little small stage, I could stand in one area. But when you're doing like these huge stages, it's like running from one end to the next end is like 60 feet or 30 feet. And you're like, oh man.
Exactly. Try to channel your inner Mick Jagger after doing that.
Oh man, I've done it so many times where like the first two songs, I was like, oh my God, we got a whole another hour to go. What did I just do? I done burnt myself out,
Totally, man. So what is it, just from a technical standpoint, the first time you did something big like that with them, how does that work? Like, or is Greg getting an email from them? How do you work out all the details of getting brought on a big tour like that? And how does it kind of go? Just like, what do people expect when they, get into a situation like that?
Man, I can't say, because all I can say is that I know Damon. And that's when I just like, man, rock and roll is different. Like this, this whole rock thing is just like, because when we came out to the States, and they were doing the tour, there were 6 tour buses.
Dang, yeah.
And like 6 semis
with all the gear.
The stuff.
Yeah.
So it was like 70 people that was like during this tour, because there was an orchestra that was from Jordan, from Syria. So there was Syrians, that was like a whole orchestra section. Yeah. There was like 6 background singers. There was myself, there was De La, there was Nina Cherry, there was Mick, Paul.
Right.
So it was like
a caravan.
Something that I can't, like, hip hop, I'm not used, you don't do nothing like that, maybe you're in a van, you know what I'm saying? Like a more, tour bus. Like, that's like living large once you be in a tour bus. Like, you're in a van driving from Cincinnati to Detroit or something like that, like,
totally.
So, it was just a different thing. But Damon, what I saw was Damon was like, I want this sound. Like, I just know, like, they rehearsed. Yeah. Every day. Like, like he made sure that the band rehearsed for every show. Yeah. That morning. Oh, really? There was a bus that go out to go rehearse the show for that night. Dang. And that was all the time. Like that, I want to say maybe one time I've been, since like through the 10-year span, I saw them not practice. Right. But no, they were always rehearsing. Damon made sure everybody rehearsed every time. No matter how good it was, he'll come back that next day and be like, man, this was flat, this was fucked up. Right. this is crazy. No, we got to make sure this is right. So just seeing that type of, and he was there. Like, it wasn't like, like a lot of times, like maybe the major artist is not there.
Right.
Like,
right.
he's there, like, no, we got to get this right,
Yeah.
And so a lot of people would be like, I just remember musicians and everybody would be pissed off because we'd be somewhere like, be Italy or somewhere, and everybody wants to go like have some fun. He's like, no, fuck that. We got to rehearse. Like, and so like, yeah, a lot of times you miss a lot of sightseeing because he was rehearsing,
That's what it takes, though. That's crazy. I have some friends who were in a big band, and the singer would always call rehearsals on like the one day off and then not show up.
Yeah.
And just make the band rehearse, and that person would be off doing their thing. It was like, dang, at least Damon showed up and he was like, we're doing this together. We're going to make this incredible. And it was.
Yeah.
That's what makes success, man.
I see them like because we didn't have to be there. Like, we got 1 or 2 songs, so it wasn't necessarily required to be there. Right. But I would just go because I was like, man, if everybody else is practicing, I want to make sure that I'm, I want to see what the stage setting is. I kind of want to just be whatever. Right. So, I go to rehearsal sometimes if I wasn't like recording in my room or doing something like that.
Yeah.
And, yeah, he was there every time. He was there
well, you got to be of that. I was just listening to Sean Penn get interviewed, and he was talking about what it was like being a director finally. And he had worked with some actors that were kind of like, whatever, not wanting, like after work, they'd be done and people wanted to go home. And he's like, let's go run these lines again. I think we can improve them. And people were like, and he was like, it broke his heart. He's like, we're here doing this fucking amazing thing that very few people get to do. Like, let's go make it amazing. Like, this is what it takes. And people like that get to where they are because of that hard work ethic, man. And that's often overlooked. You see social media and you see whatever, all the good times and people hanging out and enjoying whatever drinks and partying and everything. But it's like the people that really stay in it for the long haul are the people who put in all that work,
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like definitely, work hard, play hard type situation.
Right, absolutely.
Well,
you were just saying, like, even when they were rehearsing, you'd go, and it's like you want to go because everybody's there hanging out, but you also want to like create a good vibe. It's like we're all in this together. We're creating something amazing.
Exactly. And so, they'd be like, well, artists could come if you wanted to, and then, he would just like, I would look at Damon, I could tell in his eye, like, yeah, you should come. Like, just even for a second, just come, just, And so, I just go like, man, what the fuck? I'll go. Like, what I'm saying? If that's going to help, everybody kind of get into the zone and kind of understand what we all are parts of what's going on. So yeah, just seeing that kind of just make you realize like, okay, this guy could definitely be gone somewhere, or it could be on the plane, not even here, and say, oh, you know what, I'll meet you guys later. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But
when you're talking about all those semis that are coming along too, and that's a part a lot of people don't talk about too, is like, know your bus driver, know the guys who's setting up the rigging, like make friends with people because these are the people who make your day easier, and they're busting their asses way harder than a lot of the performers are most of the time,
Yeah, so like, I mean, of course, there's like a major catering and all that kind of stuff. So that's where everybody, during those times where everybody you get to shake hands. Oh man, I see you so many times, and you just sit down and talk to different people. And it's interesting because, like, rest in peace, the tour manager, Craig Duffy, he just recently had a car accident like the other day and passed. But
oh man,
Craig, like
R.I.P. Craig.
Craig used to, he managed Duran Duran. He was with Damon since Blur. He did Duran Duran. He did Sade. He did like Jamiroquai. He did all these like so just talking to somebody like that and just giving like, that was the blessing more or less like of everything, was like hearing these stories, like the Bobby Womack stories and the Ike Turner stories, like like I can't even say like that hearing those stories firsthand from those people was like incredible,
Absolutely, man. Just to be in the presence of people who've been doing this thing that we love so much for so long. They've been in it for decades longer than we have. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And Bobby definitely was like, I mean, you know, another person, rest in peace. He was just like, he's like, man, like, you know, I love performing, but he's like, you know, songwriting is everything.
Yeah.
He's like, man, I can't even tell you, like, songwriting saved me. He was like, you know, a lot of people think this, but he was like, you know, my first deal was actually, I think, United Artists.
Okay.
Because he was doing, when he did 125th Street, that was like under United Artists. So like, he was working with a lot of movie stuff, and he was just like, man, like, you know, he's like, that was more money than I could ever imagine at that time.
Right.
I'm doing, you know, writing songs for movies, and he's like, you know, that was a whole different game when I started doing that.
Right, residuals.
Yeah, so he was just breaking down a lot of stuff, and you know, and I think that was another thing of like greatness with Damon and working with that whole thing, because he wanted to surround himself with great people as well, you know.
Right.
And so I think like he realized like surrounding myself with these people is only, and if I listen and learn, it's only going to make me greater at my craft.
That is, you know, a huge talking point, and surrounding yourself with people that are better than you and will up your game is like, I mean, believe me, I'm never going to be Wes Montgomery on guitar, you know, but I surround myself with musicians that play songs really great and have good ears and are sensitive people. And it's like, it makes me sound better, you know?
Yeah.
There's no secret to it.
When you hear those stories, like, it's like Wes Montgomery and I think, who else was the same? Wes Montgomery and, why can't I think of his name right now?
George Benson?
No, not a guitar player, but a singer. What can I think? I know Wes Montgomery didn't really start playing till like I think his late 30s or something like that.
Is that right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, like he was an old guy. Like he was old. Bill Withers.
Oh, Bill Withers.
Bill Withers was like I want to say he was like in his late 30s or 40s.
Right.
When he did it. So like they didn't find out their craft until later in line. And so they're coming into music, being that they had jobs and being that whatever was like, they just had a different thought pattern to everything. But I remember hearing stories like, Wes Montgomery he didn't know that he was this phenomenal guitar player until like he was like 31, 32 or something. It was like he was older.
Yeah. That's such an interesting thing to me too. I mean, I've had, you know, absolutely more success in music than I ever anticipated I would. I mean, just getting to call you and get to call the guys from Fishbone and like, you know, consider you guys my friends is like, you know, I never thought that would happen. It's beautiful. And it's like, I wonder if, you know, the fact that I haven't, you know, that I didn't make it huge when I was a teenager or something, I wonder if it was a blessing for me, you know, that whole thing of like, is it better to wait a while like Bill Withers did and kind of have your success later after you've had some life experience? You know, that's, it worked out beautiful for him versus like having all this crazy success thrown at you when you're still kind of in your formative years, you know?
Yeah.
It's crazy, I think, you got to know yourself basically.
Yeah. Cause you know, you figure like there's somebody like Prince, but like everybody's not a Prince, you know, but you had this guy who's, I mean, what Prince started with 16, 17, something like real early, and then was great until his last day, you know? Yep. So, I mean, you really can't say, but I think you could be definitely right. Like some, you know, depending on your mentality, like, you know, you not getting everything you want so fast at a young age, you kind of can decipher what's right and what's wrong.
Well, I think that's such an interesting thing, like, especially with social media now. So many of the kids are looking at like, this is what it looks like to be successful. But it's like, and then kind of holding yourself up and comparing yourself to those other people, even though those other people are maybe just like, that was their one good day or that they're posting about. Well, and also the fact that they're just a totally different person than I am. Like, it's living your life is like, you can try and plan it all you want, but you never know what's going to happen. You just have to seize opportunities, try new stuff, and, hopefully it leads to good things.
Yeah, I mean, but I learned a lot of stuff from the new kids now with the whole social media thing, because a lot of rules. That's one thing that I learned from Dilla was like breaking the rules, and so he was definitely a person that made me think, just production wise and just like break, because Dilla would sample off of like a cassette tape, or
Right.
he'll sample off sample like a brand new record. Like I remember like some records was like maybe like a year or 2 years old, and he would sample from that record.
Right.
So
He didn't care.
had there was no rules that he felt to making music.
Right.
And I admired that, because I think when we were making music, it was always this thing like, oh, you got to sample from a record, and it has to be a break beat, and you got to take this beat, you got to do this, and you got to do that. And he didn't fall under none of that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
And so I think the kids now are more rule breaking than that. Like that type of analogy kind of goes into the kids. Like, I don't think kids look at, I think in our days, like, I don't want to be that one hit wonder.
Right.
But I think kids don't even care these days. Like, man, if I just make that one hit, if I just did something that went viral,
right,
I'm good. Like I'm eating, I made something that I never. And so in a way, it's kind of refreshing, because it's like, hey, you know what? You kind of acknowledge that you did do something great. Whether as you take it as like, you know what? I did this one song, and that was my only song I did, like the Milli Vanilli kind of thing. Like, oh, I did this, and I never was able to capture that moment again. I think kids don't really look at it like that. They're like, hey, man, I made something that was great.
Living for the moment. Yeah. That's true. That's a good way to look at it. That's a good way to look at it.
I kind of like take all those things into perspective of like, hey, this is, and then, it's the same way. It's like, driving a car or anything, like we're in the future now. So having the old ways of doing some stuff sometimes is like, I mean, I know a lot of people, I respect it. Like, let's say like an Adrian Young, Adrian Young, I can't ever see him leaving an analog world. Like that's his thing, is like, I'll never do anything digital, what I'm saying? And I can totally understand that, because he's trying to capture a certain sound, and he wants his music to represent a certain way.
Yeah.
Me, I'm all across the board. I'm like, man, I want to make something that's I want to make something that's good. Yeah. I don't care if it started on a laptop. I don't care if it started on an 8-track. I don't care if it was organic and started with, a guitar and some chopsticks. Like, man, what,
Same, man. I'm surrounded by analog gear in here and have been for the last 20 years. But like, I'm the first to admit, like, if I just get a great song and it's recorded on digital, I could care less. Like, if it sounds good, I don't care how it was recorded. Yeah. If it's a good song and the vibe is good and the singer's good or the MC is good, it doesn't matter how you record it to me.
Yeah. But I like I said, I mean, I'm not, I just mentioned Adrian because I just felt like, I just know that's where where he plays with. But as far as for me, I don't, like I said, watching Jay Dilla work and just being in the studio, I realized that breaking that traditional quote unquote rule book of what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to do your song.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's like, what's gonna make that moment count? Make the best song that you can kick. No, don't kind of hold yourself to that it should be like this or should be like that.
I agree, man. Well, The music business can definitely be discouraging, and trusting collaborators that don't turn out to be trustworthy. It can get us down, and there's so many things that can get us down. How do you keep yourself focused, productive, and positive and moving forward, Brown? What's your secret?
I think you just got to stay learning.
Yeah.
I think long as you open to learn and understand that, you know, like people like right now, I'm into the streaming thing like we're doing now and the whole thing. And I found myself that, because people's like, well, how does this play into music? And a lot of people doesn't understand it. And I'm like, I don't look at music as music. I look at like art as art.
Yeah.
You know, I look at it like it's sometimes talking to certain people and gaining an understanding helps with songwriting. It gives you ideas. It helps
Absolutely.
It helps with a lot of different things.
Right.
So for me, when even, you know, if I step into a studio with somebody who's much younger than me, I feel like I'm gonna play a novice. I'm gonna play like I'm novice and just kind of stay learning, because maybe they're approaching something a way that I would never approach something before.
Right.
And I think that kind of helps me understand, kind of keeps me in the mode. And that's with everything. Like, you know, I mean, I know you're an independent guy like myself. So, you know, when it comes down to the record covers, when it comes down to the writing, when it comes, like, all of that plays a part. Like that, to me, like none of it. I mean, of course, music is the foundation and the base.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, you know, your artwork, your this, and like all these things play a part in the creation.
It's all the same thing. You're just trying to express the beauty of human spirit and how beautiful we can make this world, you know, because there's lots of things to get you down. But when you're talking to people that are doing cool creative stuff and you're creating cool creative stuff, it just makes the world more beautiful, man.
Yeah. So right now I consider myself reverse engineering the music business, because I've always approached it music and then trying to get the music to the people. Yeah. And now I consider myself okay, we're in this whole streaming age. The touring kind of stopped for last year. And so I'm like, you know what? I want to learn. I want to build the people around me. I want to talk to the radio people. I want to deal with the DJs. I want to step into their world and get to know these people and go back and forth with them, so that once I get the music, that part is there already. Not necessarily I'm trying to build the relationships because I got this record now. So it's like now, so I'll build the relationships with the DJ. Oh man, you do this here, you do this here. Hey, let's stream, let's do this. Let's kind of like get our relationship together in that sense. And then once I get the music, it's almost a no-brainer that now there's this co-op and the music can spread further. So
exactly.
I that's where I'm at now. That's why I feel like I want to try something different, because I've done it in the way of doing a record and trying to get out there, and it's expensive. And it's like one of the things is that if you don't keep putting money down, the momentum of the record stops. Right. But I think that happens because it comes from a unorganic collaboration where you really don't know the DJs, you don't know the certain things, and so being that your meeting them is strictly based on you want them to play your music, there is no relationship. There's no there's nothing. So I figure if I play it different, if I get with the DJs first and we build this network and we have this relationship,
Yeah.
you'll want to play my record just because we're friends and we're homies.
Well, because they're catching your vibe and they know what your spirit is about. And it's like, that's a good dude. We know his music's good, but he's also a good human being. And it puts it on a personal level, that's missing. And it's one of the things that I understand about social media too, is like, you're not just selling music, you're selling like your lifestyle and how you are as a person.
Yeah. And then, meeting these, meeting them prior to you delivering your music, you kind of see what they're into. Like, oh, you know what? This guy really is like, he likes house music and dance music. And I never thought about incorporating that type of style into my music, or this guy likes this. And so like you start becoming a little bit more experimental in what you're doing, because you want to do something that they kind of enjoy and you enjoy at the same time.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Relationships. I think that's like such a key point. Keeping up relationships, forming relationships in the music business is, I'd say, like 80% of it,
For sure.
You've got your talent, you've got your work ethic, and all that stuff is very important. But keeping up relationships is the number one, I think.
Yeah, because the record industry, if anybody knows, the record industry is like being in that rotating glass front door, and a person could be leaving office as a gopher one day, and the next time you see them, they're like head of A&R, or they're like a owner of a label, and you're like, shit, like, what's up, man? Like, what are you doing? Oh man, I got my own label. I'm doing this now, and it's like, it's so like you have to always pay attention, because like sometimes being that you feel a certain way, or your emotions or whatever you're going through, you can quickly almost shit on somebody because you just don't pay attention to them, or you're like, oh man, that guy is just whatever. And then the next time you see him, like, I remember you from somewhere. And that person walk up to you like, yeah, you shitted on me when we was at the, oh my God, So it's like, you gotta keep yourself in check, and just
always treat everyone with respect, man. There's that famous Alan Toussaint song, the same people you meet up on your way up, you're going to meet up on your way down,
Yeah.
You got to treat everyone good, because who knows? The tables flip quickly.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for all we almost 2 hours here, man. I'm so grateful.
Thanks, Dan. I hope you got enough for the first one. I hope it works out and sets something where you can, sets it off. Oh, man. Right.
I'm so lucky to have you as my first guest, Brown. Thank you, man.
I appreciate it, Dan, and much success to your whole thing. And hey, man, I know I can't wait to see, because I like to watch different musicians and see different people talk, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna have somebody, Angelo or somebody from Fishbone, and I'd be right there looking like, oh yeah, oh shit. Yeah.
I hope I'd love to talk to Angelo, man. I'm supposed to interview Chris and Norwood and Fish. Wax Poetics just hit me up to do something for them. And so they said yes to that. So I was like, you guys want to do my podcast too? So hopefully they will, man, because I'd love to talk to them.
We had Norwood, Greg interviewed Norwood, like, man, like he's great.
He's such a sweet dude, man. He played bass on a track I just did, and it turned out great, man. He's so amazing, man.
Yeah, truly disgraces is like, man, that's like, that's like, that shit is tight.
Totally. Yeah. I'm a huge Fishbone fan. I have been since, man, junior high school, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Saw them a bunch. They were so inspiring to me, for sure.
Man,
love those dudes.
But makes much success to your platform, and thanks, Dan, for having me. I really appreciate it.
My brother, thank you, man. I so appreciate you, Brown.
Thank you, sir.
All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Conduit. The Conduit is brought to you by Crewest Studio and DanubeProductions.com. We'd like to dedicate this episode to the memory of Craig Duffy, tour manager extraordinaire and friend to many. Also, many thanks to Greg Campbell, Imani, the folks at Squadcast, Polymash, Captivate, We Edit Podcasts, Universal Audio, Audio Technica, Shure, and Avid. Extra special thanks to my brothers from Other Mothers, Scott Power, Bill Coulter, and Alex Desert. And last but not least, go check out Soul Picnic, my hand-picked music playlists on notrealart.com. Till next time, this is Dan Ubik, signing off.